My name is Daragh McLoughney. I'm the director at MCL Architecture. So we're a practice that is based in Wimbledon Village. We work primarily with property developers on projects like this, where we're just trying to really push the envelope of design, maximize the potential of a site, but balance that as well with context, architectural treatments, etc. When I was introduced to it, it was 111 Chertsey Road. It's now Trinity Place is the marketing for it. So initially is looking at the plans, looking at the footprint that we have, seeing how many units we could fit in here, obviously thinking about space standards, proper use of space, user experience, etc. And then also looking where we can add on any extensions. So the site itself is quite a tight site. So of course, we looked at going up and had to analyze the existing structure of the building, which could take one additional floor, which is what we proposed in the end. Our initial brief was essentially to maximize the potential of this site. So convert it to residential, so it was an existing commercial building, and very much had a commercial feel about it as well, and a tired feel. It had this kind of, 80s, worn down, sort of tired commercial building feel about it. So our brief was to, first of all, analyze the footprint, see how many units we could fit in here, working with space standards, thinking about user experience, etc. And then also to think about the architectural impact and how we can give this building a residential feel, give it a new lease of life, and kind of, revitalize it really. So that was the initial brief, and from there I'm happy to say that client is very happy, and we believe we've achieved that as well. There was a long waiting period where we weren't sure if this project was really going to go ahead. Thankfully, the shareholders didn't buy out the building, and our client did, and we were instructed to go ahead and implement the design that we had identified at that concept stage. So after that, I suppose the big challenge was planning and getting our planning permission through. So what I always like to do, and the way that MCL always approaches these projects, is try to establish the big picture first. So what we did is look at what this building is going to be like in its final stage, and think about how the existing building, once we refurbish that, how that's going to relate to the new floor. So once we had that big picture kind of established, then it was parceling that into its different planning applications. So there's 3 planning applications we did in total. We did one for a prior approval for permitted development to change the use. We did one then to convert the external facade and change that to suit the new internal arrangement. And then a 3rd application to add on the extra floor. So there were some challenges involved in that. We've done a scheme already in the area in Woking, and had some experience with planners in the past. Having learned lessons on previous projects that helped us, thankfully the planning got through. And then after that, so far so good. I'm happy to say site has really been very quick. Contractor's been great. We've issued all our construction information obviously months ago. Good team of consultants as well. So happy to say that once we've got onto site, it's been smooth sailing, so that's good. And the fact that scaffolding is being struck next week, I can confidently say we haven't hit any big snags on site, so that's good. As far as the design and the architecture goes, so initially, as I mentioned, the first port of call was looking at it just from a pure layout point of view. Let's see how many units we can fit in here, what kind of layouts they have. Let's think about user experience, how people use the space on a daily basis. So that was the initial analysis, really looking at the layouts. Then, as I mentioned earlier, it was really trying to revitalize this building, give it that residential feel. A big driving point of our design is user experience and how that translates then to the external architecture. So big fan of the philosophy of Robert Venturi, who was a postmodernist in the 20th century. But one thing he spoke a lot about was dual functioning elements. So something that essentially meets one function but also has, say, an aesthetic property. So we'll go up and we'll have a look at these feature windows that we've put on the 3rd floor. And the real driving point from them was having user experience, thinking about, maximum views out, outlook, increased natural daylight, but what that does is it gives really interesting architectural language from the exterior as well. That third floor has a lot of projections and articulation in it, and as a result you get really interesting shadows, depth, and it was also trying to marry the proportions of that new floor with what we have here on the existing, so it looks like, again, one very harmonious building. So that was they were some of the big design challenges. So as far as the location goes, I mean, Woking is, it's very pro-development at the moment. Walking around, you can see lots of scaffolding, lots of big buildings going up. It's becoming a lot more of a commuter town as well to London. And as far as the demographic goes, it was really first-time buyers and small families. So we have a mix of 1s and 2 beds here. And as you can see, the sort of interior design and everything as well. Lessons learned on this project. One big lesson, and maybe this is kind of self-evident as well, is to know your team. I was very lucky going into this project. Now, this is the 4th project I've done with this contractor. Same group of consultants as well, as far as structural engineers, mechanical engineers. So we all know how each other work. Now, look, a lot of projects you are going to meet people for the first time. I'm not saying that every project you go into, you should absolutely have worked with everybody there, but it always helps. And especially when we got to this one, just because we know the way we work, we've learned lessons on past projects, especially with the subcontractors and things like that. So yeah, a bit of knowledge about the team before we were going in was a big plus. Knowing the council as well was a big lesson. So as I mentioned earlier, we have another project in Woking that is being completed, I'm happy to say. I suppose another lesson as well is kind of trusting your gut on these sort of things. So once the design is established, you can start to redesign and start second guessing your design so many times. But once we had done a really thorough analysis of the site, understood what our client was about, looked at the architectural impact, etc. Once you've come up with a good solution that you feel kind of meets that main criteria, and as you can see, the interior design is also targeted towards that demographic. Yeah, so the planning process, it was a little bit tricky. As I mentioned, we had 3 different applications. Some were more contentious than others. The permitted development, so the first application getting through the change of use to change it to residential from commercial. So that was straightforward enough. But then it was the architectural changes, so changing the facade of the existing building, and then adding on this extra floor. That was something that we needed a good bit of analysis with and a good bit of dialogue with the council. So we prepared various 3D models, CGI visuals, material samples, etc. Met with the council as well, talked about our proposals, the approach that we had, and especially that very user experience focus approach that we had as far as thinking about people's outlook and their kind of day-to-day use of the space. It's always the way, I think, any kind of designer or architect, as soon as a project's finished, you see something, you're like, I would have done that differently, or maybe that bit could tweak. But when you're looking at things like that and you're thinking from a finishes point of view, I think that's something so minor that you can make note of it and keep it in mind for next projects. But because the forms, the proportions that have come out, the finishes, the fact that we are on time and on budget, the main thing, from that point of view, yes, I'm very happy. I got a message from the client during the week. They had a project team meeting out here. He's sending me videos, and yeah, he's absolutely delighted with the outcome. So the main thing from our point of view, if we have been able to inject some inspirational design into a project, that's fantastic. But obviously, it's happy clients at the end of it is the measure of a successful project, and happy clients. Happy designer. So new projects, yeah, happy to say we've got a few lined up. So we are currently working on one in Guildford, putting some planning applications together for that. A similar project, existing commercial building, which we'll be adding 2 floors onto and changing the facade. I think we're looking at 65 units there. Again, a mixture of 1s and 2s. So that will be getting lodged next week, and yeah, we'll be going through a few planning applications before moving on to site with that one. And we have another one that's on site should be finishing around April. That's 30 flats in Leatherhead. Happy to say working with David Kemp, who's a Qandor member on that one. And there are kind of, three main projects at the moment, and we've got some smaller projects as well with private clients that keep us ticking over. So didn't collaborate, unfortunately, with any Qandor members on this project. As I mentioned, I do a good bit of work with David and I've worked on other projects with him. So yeah, hopefully I'll be working with a lot more Qandor members in the future. As far as suppliers, I would like to mention Grove Construction, who are the main contractor. I've been working with them for a number of years now. They're very efficient. They get on with it, they get the big picture, and yeah, they're a pleasure to work with.
So if you enjoyed this video, why not check out some of our other videos? I recently interviewed lots of fantastic people. There's loads of good content in there. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video.